Welcome to TradeABI.com. This is John. This report is for the 13th. Well, we started with a pretty decent gap down after the negotiations failed. Sort of really didn't mean much because even if they were successful, really, what was the likelihood that the Strait of Hormuz was going to open up in free traffic? And even if it did, it's not going to change what's already the impact of the situation, and it's only going to become exponentially worse. Interesting. Now we're going to be doing the toll charging or just blocking ships from Iran. That keeps evolving. That was the latest one. It's interesting. Complete breakdown though from a DOC reading chart. We already had MBI white leading. It was just a matter of waiting for magenta to dip back below underneath there. Would have resulted in decay. And you can see from a positive extreme standpoint, yeah, we know where our range is for retrace, somewhere down in that 6650 range, though 6680s could be reasonable as well. Not that big a deal from an NQ standpoint. Likewise, similar readings, so it's all pretty much identical. I wouldn't put it past the market for being able to recover completely and actually turn around to green. A little hard to see with the dark red candle there, but you can see 104 for West Texas. And that's potentially going to climb. It'll be interesting to see if the Iranians decide that they think they can go after U.S. warships that are conducting this blockage. So the blockade, we'll see how that plays out. That was not good news for the euro, but it's recovered quite a bit as the markets recovered from the early open, which is just wild, crazy, given how bad things are for the EU setup. Because at the end of the day, they have no energy prospects whatsoever, and anything that they're going to get is going to come from the largesse of the U.S. Opening the strait. As Trump was clear to point out, all the traffic is headed to the Gulf of Mexico to pick up oil. So will they be able to handle it? That becomes the real question. Can they supply the deficit? And that'll be an interesting one. And will you put a significant curtail on Iranian abilities to sell? Because that will matter as to their desperation. We've already seen a little bit of moderating for the president. Of course, he talks about if the U.S. wasn't totalitarian, but when they say totalitarian, it means they want to be able to sponsor terrorism and they want to be able to have a nuclear weapon, and therefore anything that suggests that they shouldn't do that is totalitarian. So that's how you interpret those words. It's pretty straightforward. From a gold standpoint, yeah, it dipped, but no reason why gold isn't going to continue higher. Inflation is just going to be staggering here. We saw the beginnings of it in the last CPI report, just the tail end of it. Most of it was from earlier late February, March numbers in that, but the next one is going to be catastrophic. There's no question about it. Bitcoin that was on its rise during the extortion period here, and fading back a little bit. There may be less demand if the Iranians aren't able to exercise their cash for transit via Bitcoin, then not as much demand for the Bitcoin than in that case. For the 50K, we had the MBI white leading from the middle of yesterday when the decay started. We were moving towards the 50%. Tried to do a little attempted spark right towards the end there, and then you can see the massive gap down. We had this positive extreme at the 67.50. We didn't quite get there. What was the low? 67.67. So just a little bit over where that was. But get that positive extreme, and then the one all the way down. And those have yet to meet their mark. And it was fairly quiet day from Friday's action. We had some moves, but then later in the day is when that selling started. It was all pretty clean from a negative side read. You gotta be careful because as soon as I open up to the where we finished at from a 5K standpoint, it was somewhat bullish at the end there. They drove it up just to clear things, but you can see that was a huge drop. It's been all buy pretty much from that early dip. And we came back down to a fill level that I had already previously marked for the 5K chart before popping right back up. So interesting that that line was already there. Nothing new from that standpoint. This is the turnaround. So what the orange represents is you've got the white where MBI white is leading over MBI red, and then you get the dip of the orange green below this negative 18 level, and once it reaches the maximum point, you get the crossover here of red, and then boom, you get the turnaround with the orange dipping below, and that's where you can enter your buy setup right in the middle there. So right at the open at the 67.80, and boom, just carried through. So once, and this was an interesting one. We were talking about this earlier, where that orange rising up, you have the green continuing. What your expectation is that the MBI DOC, I mean red here, is going to follow up at the same time your MBI magenta taking the lead. So the power of it is that short cover, which is your MBI white spike. And that's what you're looking to do. And in that case, you've got to see a continuation of red, particularly DOC getting above negative 7 level here. In this case, it flattened out. That's not exactly good news from that standpoint. So it's going to need to convert. They need that steel to continue to break higher, and orange to dip back down again for another wave buy setup, but not quite happening at this particular state so far. So that's the general way to read that, and that's basically what the paint is reflecting, because it's a handoff. You go from the turnaround view to the short-term buyers to mid-term buyers in the green, and then as they start to fade, you expect that your longer-term continuation supply is going to start to kick in. And if it does, great. That's when we start to break out above that 50% and continue. If it doesn't, that's when you stall. We get sideways action until there's enough momentum to push it back again. So that's the broad read of that. And then it just replays over and over again. And this is where we get the brief moves that last, and then boom, it comes in. You can see they're above the negative 7, then boom, dips back below, and that's already started it. We already had the early warning with the MBI white spike, but then you wait for that pivot of magenta. And oftentimes it's just a matter of anytime you see these pivots of magenta under the 25 level with a white leading, you know you're heading lower. So it's pretty straightforward from that standpoint. It doesn't change; it just repeats itself over and over again, and same cycles. The duration of them is the only thing that gets changed. That's the beauty of it. As always, anything relevant, I'll put on the team chat. Make sure you get your taxes filed. Coming up. Trade well.